We have been around for almost 100 years. We work in 120 countries, including China, and we were founded on trying to help refugee children. So right now what we're seeing is refugee children coming from Syria, and of course we are asking, have they got what they need, these children? They need shelter, they need food, but they also need education, and they need someone who looks at their mental health, because these are children that have seen something that children should never see. So we have children in the Greek islands that are in detention. We have children in Turkey, and what is common for all these children is that they have seen things that children should never experience, and they're suffering from deep mental trauma, and for the first time ever. And Save the Children have conveyed this survey where we can actually see and prove and hear the stories from these children, and the mental trauma they're suffering is enormous.
First of all, tell us a bit about the children that are trapped in Syria in this report that's called Invisible Wounds.
Yeah.
What are the problems? What is the most urgent problem they're faced with?
I mean, we call it invisible wounds because these are the wounds you can't see, but perhaps the wounds that takes the longest to heal and can be most damaging for the children and also the country they have to build up in some years if we don't heal them. And what we're basically seeing for these children is that many of them, they can't sleep at nights, they're wetting their beds, they have general trauma, they don't know who to turn to, they think of committing suicide, and some of them are rendered speechless. They can't actually speak anymore. These are the kind of trauma that these children are suffering. Put on top of that, we have the lack of education. And I ask the world, how are these children going to go back to Syria ever to try to build that country up again if they're so damaged? This is not a few children. These are many children that have suffered.
I was going to ask you, how widespread is the situation? I mean, you interviewed hundreds of children and families. How do you estimate the number of children affected?
I don't think anyone can, but we have done the biggest survey of Syrian children that I think anyone has ever done, because we are interested not only in what children need here and now, it's food and shelter, but also asking ourselves and getting the global community to ask itself, how are these children going to live in the years that are coming? And how are they going to build up their countries? And it is quite telling when we hear about children who want to use drugs because they don't know how to face reality. They want to commit suicide. Some of them also succeed in committing suicide because they can't face life on this earth anymore.
Yeah, there's a second report that's about particularly the refugee children that are trapped on Greek islands, on these 5 Greek islands, as the EU and Turkey are coming back and forth about how to resettle them. It seems that the process has taken extraordinarily long. And that report is called A Tide of Self-Harm and Depression. What is special about these children that you found?
It's basically the same trauma these children are suffering. I went to Greece some time back and I met some of these children, and I'm not protesting that European countries have the right to protect their borders and do what they have to do, but one thing we should keep in mind, and that is everywhere in the world, that children should not be kept in detention. Children are children and they don't belong in detention, and we might not call it detention, but these children, and I have spoken to them, they know that every day a door is locked from the outside and they can't get out. So it feels like they are in prison. And I spoke to them and they feel depressed. They don't know what the future brings. I am impressed with these children because every day they come out and they wake up, they go to the child-friendly spaces that we are creating, Save the Children, to learn, to feel that they can be children again. So there is something we can do for these children, but they are not being treated the way children should be treated because they should not be in detention in the Greek islands.
But what are the biggest difficulties the local people are facing in trying to help these children? Is it lack of funds? Is it lack of will? Or is it language barrier?
It's a mixture of both, all of those things. I don't think it's so much a lack of will, because there's a tremendous hospitality in the Greek islands as well, and I'm not actually blaming the Greek government. But of course it's a lack of funding, but there's also a general lack of cooperation within the European countries. The European countries, which have done so much together and created the European Union, and are so amazing actually at cooperating, they have not cooperated very well when it comes to the refugees. And that has actually meant that now we have refugee children, Syrian children, who have seen the worst you can see in this world. They are blocked in camps in Greece. Some of them are in detention where they shouldn't be. They're seeing things they should never be seeing. So we're failing these children twice. First, there was a war in Syria that they had to flee, and they had to see physically the bombs falling, and then they come to Europe, and we're not helping them with an education and building a future for these children, harming them once again.
What are the other things that European countries can do together to help these children, you think? Because you were saying you didn't want to criticize any particular government, but you think European
we have
governments
to
could do
uphold
better.
the standards that we have set for ourselves. We have standards in this world, luckily, that should be protecting children. We have the UN Charter for protecting refugees and a specific charter to help children. And it is very clear that we have said to each other and shaken hands on it that children should not be kept in detention. So I understand that European countries need to protect their borders. I was a Prime Minister myself. I know you have to protect their borders. But at the same time, we should keep our soft spot for the children and make sure that they are not in detention, because we're not only letting those children down, we are also letting our future down because they're not equipped to partake in that future.
Yeah, looking ahead, I'm afraid I haven't seen too many encouraging signs in the kind of relationship between the EU and Turkey in terms of how to resettle the refugees. For instance, just a couple of days ago, we're seeing this kind of war words between Turkey and EU. For instance, the Turkey's interior minister has threatened to blow the mind of Europe by sending 15,000 refugees a month to EU territory in an intensifying dispute with the bloc. How do you look at this kind of rhetoric, using refugees as kind of bargaining chip for political purposes?
Well, it goes to show that the EU-Turkey deal, it might have looked good when they did the deal, but now it is creating a situation where refugees are being used as a bargaining chip in a very unpleasant language between Turkish leaders, Turkish Erdogan, I should say, and European leaders. And that is not where we should be. I urge everyone to calm down, and I'm not doing that. I'm doing that mostly for the children and the refugees whose life are at stake here. We have to remember this is people we're talking about. People are just people, and particularly children. We have to help them, we have to protect them. So this kind of language that goes on between Turkey and European leaders right now, it is not helping these children.
Let's talk a bit about your mission here this time in China. Why are you here? What are you busy with?
Well, first of all, I come back to China every so often. I was here as Prime Minister. I've been here as a tourist. This is a country that I really love and admire. So it's great to be back in China. But now I'm here as CEO for Save the Children. We are a very big organization. As I say, we work in 120 countries. We worked in China for almost 30 years. And what we're basically trying to do is to assist the Chinese government. And we have very good cooperation with the Chinese government in the Chinese government's endeavor to bring children out of poverty and to give more rights to children and basically protect children. And wherever we can be of assistance, we are there. We work in 12 provinces across the country. We work in the most poor and rural areas of this country. And right now we're doing as different projects as helping disabled children be part of the normal school system and get a chance. We also know there's a lot of children who are left alone because their parents are working in town. And we're also helping the Ministry of justice, help them to think about how can we create a judicial system for youth that is different from the adult judicial system. So these are the different things we do here. Working with the Chinese government, I think we know how to do that. Just be of assistance to an effort which has been amazing over the last many years on this part of the Chinese people and the Chinese government.
How big of a challenge do you think China is facing in all of the things in protecting the rights of children in this regard? And how has it been your experience in working with the Chinese government in addressing these?
Well, I would say, I don't hesitate to say that it was the hard effort of the Chinese people and the Chinese government that brought the world into a situation where we could say that we had achieved the Millennium Development Goals. If it hadn't been for the effort of China of bringing hundreds of millions of children out of poverty, we would not have reached that target of the Millennium Development Goals. Now, of course, the world has set new targets.
Yes.
And with the Chinese president being part of that and leading that effort, I heard the Chinese president speak in the World Economic Forum in Davos some months back, and he was very clear. China wants to be part of the world, China wants to engage, and China wants to take its responsibility for the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yes.
And there is no doubt that if China does with the Sustainable Development Goals, exactly the same as the Chinese government did with the Millennium Development Goals, we have a chance of actually reaching those goals. So that is what I'm hoping. That's what Save the Children is here to back and to support as much as we can. Even though we only take a little part of that, we are here to back that effort because it is so important that China keeps going and keeps bringing children out of poverty, bringing them in education and lowering and making sure that all children survive past their first 5 years. No child should die from diseases we could have prevented.